BC for sponsoring the panel today. And what we're going to focus on is really continuing the conversation we started last year, which is about how, as filmmakers and content creators, you can get your films or materials to an audience. How do you find an audience on the multitude of platforms that are available to us today? And so we have a great panel, people from all different platforms that can talk to you about how they're reaching audiences, even on traditional venues, finding new ways to find an audience. So I'm just going to start by asking everyone to go around and introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about themselves and their company before we get into it. Thanks. Start, Alex?
Yep, I'm Alex Marvar. I'm here for VHX. I used to be a filmmaker, or I still am, I suppose, but was very excited to start working with VHX earlier this year because it was the kind of thing that I had wished existed before I knew that it did. And it's an internet distribution company. It's a tech platform, basically, that lets anyone with video to sell, whether you are a filmmaker, a distributor, any kind of video creator, to sell content directly to your audience from whatever website you choose. And we give you a wealth of tools and features so that you can execute the distribution strategy of your dreams or of your fans' dreams. And sell from either your website or any kind of website that you want to embed VHX in. And you can sell anywhere in the world to anyone with a credit card or a PayPal account. We don't acquire content or believe in exclusivity at all. It's really just a set of tools for you to get your work out there.
Great.
Great. I'm Joe Pascual. I'm the co-founder of Dotstudioz. We're definitely the new player in the block. As a matter of fact, we just launched our product yesterday. So, but let me explain that with a caveat. We have been around for about 3 years. We were founded in 2010 here in Vancouver, BC. We have offices in Los Angeles as well, but we have been working with broadcast clients, film distributors over the past 3 years, building out their online and digital footprint online on how to deliver their videos, how to reach their audiences online. We've kind of stopped that for a minute just so that we could concentrate on releasing the platform that we really envisioned from the very beginning, and that's what we launched yesterday, and it's Dotstudio Pro. And it's a management system that helps you monetize your content across multiple platforms through VOD, but as well as advertising. That's it.
Great.
My name is Dylan Marchetti. I, up until about January, was the founder and president of a company called Variance Films. We merged that company with a digital company called Go Digital in January to create a new company called Amplify. I don't actually know what my official title is there, but I basically run the New York office. I don't think that's my title, but it might be. I run the New York office, and I run basically all things related to theatrical distribution and marketing, as well as acquisitions. And Amplify is basically to continue the mission we started at Variance, which was helping filmmakers get their films out into the universe, now not just theatrically. Now we don't have to kick the can down the road. We can help you digitally, and we can do weird and strange creative things like we've done in the past for everyone from Spike Lee to Dave Grohl to John Sayles to filmmakers you might have never heard of, but you're going to be hearing from very soon, if I'm right.
Thanks. James?
My name is James Shapiro. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Drafthouse Films, which is the distribution arm of the Alamo Drafthouse, which is a very cool, thanks, yay. Very cool theater chain in the United States. We've got 19 theaters right now all over the country, and we're expanding to 50 by 2018. My boss, Tim League, started Drafthouse Films a few years ago to grow alongside the theater chain. We have a film festival in Austin in September called Fantastic Fest, and yeah, thank you. One thing Tim saw at Fantastic Fest where there were a number of films that he loved and wanted to get to a wider audience that weren't getting distribution or weren't getting the distribution that they deserved. And he felt like he could do that. So he started with a movie called Four Lions, and that did well enough that he brought myself and a couple other people on board to grow a distribution channel that could grow along the theaters. So we are a 100% curated label. We only put out movies that we love. You will never hear us say, this movie is just okay, but we really need to do it because it's going to make a lot of money. About 60% of our titles are foreign language, 30% are documentaries. So we're pretty niche, but because we own our own theaters and the theater chain's going to grow, we can offer a robust and dedicated theatrical release for all of our films. And then we also purchase all rights and work with a lot of companies that are here on this panel in order to fully exploit films.
Yeah, what's cool too in talking to James before is that they actually serve drinks and food at the theaters while you're watching the movies, which I think is pretty cool, and we'll get into that.
Yeah, I mean, the theater chain is built to be like the corporate. So there's no talking or texting during the movie. They will literally throw you out. Yeah, it's really annoying to go to how bad behavior is in theaters these days. All light levels are tested, before screenings to make sure that it's optimal sound and picture. We pride ourselves in great programming. So we do a mixture of, we'll play Avengers, but at the same time we'll play movies that you've never heard of. And it's the same ideology as the distribution channel. We want to build a level of trust where people will know that if it's a Drafthouse Films title or if it's playing in an Alamo Drafthouse, it's going to be something that's going to engage you and stimulate you.
Great, thanks. Straith?
Hi, so I'm Straith. I'm the Director of Content Strategy at BitTorrent. What I'm working on is BitTorrent Bundle, which is our direct-to-fan publishing platform. We started this experiment about 2 years ago. Today, the platform has over 2 million licensed and legal titles, over 10,000 publishers, and 170 million users. It's an awesome place for some of the bigger stories that don't necessarily fit into nice, simple, easy boxes. And it's a phenomenal way to meet a community of people who are passionate about film and passionate about art and connect with them directly.
Cool, 170 million people. Wow. That's appealing. What I thought we could talk about first is how the market has changed even just in the last year, because everything's changing so quickly, and all your companies are changing. And you have plans to expand into more theaters, which is fascinating. So maybe we'll just pick up with Dylan, because Dylan was on the panel last year and VHX was, and I'd like to hear from you two first. What have you seen changed? I mean, you merged your company. I'd love to know why and what's happened and what caused that. And
I mean, the truth is the market's changing in ways that are really good for filmmakers, and the market's changing in ways that are a little tougher for filmmakers. And the initial part of my restriction is like when you're only working with theaters and you're only doing theatrical. The two frustrations I had were, first of all, like we'd come on a film and we'd do this great plan and we'd execute all this great stuff, and then we have to pass it to another company. And there's plenty of great companies out there that do great work, and there's plenty of companies that put out 40 films a month and actually think that's something to brag about digitally. And these films increasingly land with a resounding thud, and it's very frustrating. So the idea of merging is we found a like-minded company that had been in that business and realized they didn't want to be in that business anymore. Like they wanted to be able to hand manage independent film releases that don't necessarily fit in a box. So with Theatrical, you basically need to have a film that's between 70 and theoretically 200 minutes that can play, for most theaters, 4 shows a day, 7 days a week. And that model doesn't really, I know it doesn't really interest me that much. It definitely interests the theaters, but they're going to evolve, or they're going to have a lot of problems. So we wanted to be in a situation where we can help push that evolution and we can help take it to a next level. So at our company now, we're doing traditional releases. We just put out a Terry Gilliam film in 60 screens and a Belle and Sebastian musical in 60 screens. But this week we also put out a film by Don Hertzfeld, which is an animated film. It's an anthology, it's an hour. And we're not putting it in theaters, but we're also taking care of it. We're making sure the materials are good. We're making sure it's up everywhere, making sure the filmmaker's informed. And we're able to do that kind of thing because I'm no longer forced to just do one movie a month that's going to go to X number of theaters and go forth from there. I think Theatrical is a valuable tool for a lot of films, but I increasingly am finding a lot of films where I'm like, look, I don't know that you need a theatrical release. You've made a film, it's real. You can undergo more cost expenditures by hiring someone like me to do your theatrical, but I don't know that that's going to increase your audience as much as a smart marketing campaign that's targeted digitally, whether it be through someone. We work with VHX a lot because we like their platform and we like the way it's able to go worldwide. Like, why does it have to be limited to America? Every time I release a film in the US, I get the good people of Canada writing in saying, hey, what's up? And I got to write back, oh, we didn't buy Canadian rights. No one wants to hear that anymore. So we're getting there, but like we're sort of in a weird growing pains kind of place right now where the old guys still have their models and a lot of the rules apply to me even if I don't want them to. So we're just basically trying to bend and flex around them as much as we possibly can. I think that's sort of where we're at right now.
Great, thanks. And so you're new at VHX, but what's your perspective on what's changed for VHX and in the marketplace?
Well, when VHX started 2.5 years ago, it was friends of friends of Aziz Ansari introduced VHX's founders because Aziz was looking for a way to sell his comedy stand-up special directly to his fans from his own website, the way Louis C.K. did. And there was like, literally the software didn't exist yet, and that was just 2.5 years ago. So VHX was kind of built sort of for him to do that, and when it worked really well, it was tailored to work for any kind of video content, from features and docs to short pieces of content, and all of the best practices that we've seen we've made into features. So, you know, I would have said that the trend seems to be short content is becoming more popular. People are kind of getting drawn into things because they learn about something through its YouTube channel, or you know, episodic content is becoming the new film. I feel like that was like something everyone was saying just a few months ago when True Detective came out or something, like this is a new movie. But now you know, VHX is working with a couple different titles. Camp Dakota was the first, but Black and Sexy TV is a channel that we have that's wildly popular. Just these examples of episodic content that started its audience with its little pieces of content on YouTube or on Vine that are now going to long form. So it's like that trend has switched where you know, you're starting with something small and then it's getting longer instead of being broken up into episodic. I think though it all ends up pointing to building an audience first, and a lot of people are seeing that it's really easy to build an audience in a space like YouTube or Vine, or you know, these other outlets where huge communities are already thriving, and then they're able to carry that audience into a platform for direct distribution like VHX. And so that's where we've seen a lot of our like standalone successes, or we've partnered with people like Amplify and Drafthouse to work on films where you know, they have a team of people building an audience and building momentum and building marketing strategy around the idea that it can be sold directly to fans with that momentum.
How many titles do you guys have on VHX now, and how many users?
We have about 2,600 titles for sale. And yesterday, we had our 1,000,000th user. So 1 million people have viewed, either purchased a stream or a download or both of a film, or received one from a crowdfunding campaign. We do free crowdfunding fulfillment, the digital part. We don't send your t-shirts, but we can sell them from your website. Yeah, so any way that someone has received a film from VHX, there's now 1 million people who've done that. So we are very much in the startup space, but I think, you know, we're one of the new players that's coming into transactional being more and more popular as more people are subscribing to high-speed internet than cable TV. Those lines just crossed in the last year. And watching things online is becoming very much the norm, and it's giving a lot more hope to non-subscription based models and to transactional sales and to selling direct to fan. So
Great.
I was just going to add to that. I thought it was kind of interesting. In terms of your question, is things have changed, but yet they're kind of like a mirror of what they used to be. In a sense, just what you were saying right now, where you know, not every movie fits the mold of a theatrical release in your world. Well, that's kind of what they were telling filmmakers, you know, independent filmmakers way back when, and the alternative back then was DVD release. I think the opportunity that we do have right now is that, you know, in contrast to DVD and foreign release on DVD, is that we have a platform or a means, which is the internet, to actually have a little bit more or a lot more control over how we're actually delivering that content and how we're interacting with our end users and our customers. what the internet really has given us, and that's through all social networks and everything, is that we're in direct contact with who our consumer is. And I think filmmakers are starting to get used to that. And you mentioned a lot of titles that have come from YouTube that are now starting to coalesce into like longer form content and VHX. I mean, YouTube, anybody's ever been to VidCon, which is the video conference for YouTubers that happens every September, is it? I think in June in Anaheim. I mean, it's a whole parallel universe of celebrityism, and I mean, it's like it's like a complete parallel to what happens at TIFF or at VIFF, right? And screaming women, and it's like the Beatles. It's like Brad Pitt could walk in there and nobody would care really because they have their own sort of a crazy universe happening. But what's unique about that paradigm is that they are been grappling with monetization for a while now and are actually good at it. And surprisingly, you have 15-year-old kids, 16-year-old kids walking around already knowing how to build a business out of video. Mm-hmm. They know how to sell their merchandise. They know how to create content every single day. They know how to engage their audience every single day. And I think that's something that is slowly transitioning into the film world, where certain filmmakers that are more entrepreneurial are kind of getting the whole idea that, hey, wait a minute, if they can do it, I can do it with really good production quality. And there's people like Freddie Wong on YouTube who's proved that he can do really super great looking content and yet go viral at the same time. So that's kind of the unique opportunity that we have right now in this moment in time. I don't know how long it'll last, but it's a great way to capitalize now to really reach your audience. And I think with platforms like VHX and ours and Dotstudio Pro, we really provide that pipeline so that you can actually take the technology out of the equation and leverage the internet to really reach your consumers, which, by the way, is back in the living room again because we're now enjoying connected devices and connected TVs. So that's where we're consuming media again. And so it's a great opportunity.
Right, the internet, I mean, gives us ubiquity and the ability to be in front of our audiences wherever they are. And they might be in theaters, they might be buying DVDs, or they might be on the internet, or if they are buying DVDs, like Drafthouse's DVDs, I think we do the digital fulfillment, right? There's a little card in every DVD that you can download the movie to. It's just about, let's be in front of our audiences in all the ways, and the internet provides that. And when you have your movie out there, and you're selling it directly, and you're getting the email addresses and the cities where everyone lives, like every single person that buys your movie, you get that information. Like if you're a distributor or a filmmaker, you can leverage that information for this project, for your theatrical tour, for the next infinite number of movies you make. So that's real power that hasn't really been in our hands as creators before. But these new tools are making that possible.
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to come to James, but I mean, I have a movie that's out in theaters right now, and actually the thing that I have found personally that's driven people the most is emailing them. Not marketing, not posters, not billboards, emails, and it's been a fascinating experience. You had some great observations about how you perceive the market to have changed, especially around VOD. I wonder if you could share that with us. So I think it's interesting.
Well, I mean, the most important thing is things change so rapidly now. I mean, you're talking about when you had people here last year, how it's changed. We could have this panel in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And have that same conversation. And it's, as a distributor, you're frequently buying movies that are not going to get released until 6 months, a year down the line. And what you forecasted when you bought it, you have to maintain some fluidity in that, because the reality of what the world's going to look like a year later when you release it is going to be different. We're dealing with a situation where it's very difficult to be a distributor these days because the overall revenue for the entire entertainment industry for film is shrinking, and it's dramatically shrinking now because of we've shifted away from we used to live in a world where you went and saw things in theaters, and then there was a home video window, and then there was a broadcast window. Now all three of those windows are outlets for people, and the broadcast window, that last window, is becoming a more and more significant piece of how independent films are being seen, because you have companies like Netflix that are occupying that broadcast space, and the proposition that they bring to the table for household consumption of entertainment is so much cheaper than the other two windows that it's just driving so many people into that window. And that window, we saw this announcement this week about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon 2 being on Netflix the day that it's being released in theaters. We're blurring those lines, but we're also losing a lot of the revenue that was being made in all three of those windows. So that's causing all this fluidity. So you and I were talking earlier about VOD and how DVD had declined and had sort of plateaued at the very bottom. And distributors from studios all the way down to small guys like me are trying to find ways to compensate for the loss of DVD. So you have studios now relying on international box office, and that's driving a lot of revenue for them. But the movies that I'm buying, I'm not either getting international rights, or they're not movies that really can be monetized the same way in China that something like Avengers can be monetized. So you have a lot of digital distribution was trying to compensate for the lack of DVD sales. And VOD was a big part of that. And you actually had distribution companies in the United States that was their sole, or 80% of the revenue that they were generating on titles was through VOD. And they were so successful that a lot of other people wanted to get in that space. And now that space is so saturated, and it's not really saturated with what I would call quality product, that consumers are no longer able to trust the higher price point, because you used to be able to sell, hey, this is in theaters at the same time, and so we're going to charge you $10 for it, which is about the price of a theater ticket. But if you're not feeling like it's the same experience, it's not worth the same price point as something you expect to see in theaters, consumers are no longer trusting that price point. So you're seeing a lot of trouble in the VOD space. Now it's so saturated, and you can't really count on the same revenue that you would expect, 6 months ago. So you're seeing some of these companies that had built their, what they do on a distribution level based on VOD, that they are now buying product and trying to make theatrical, again, the sole point for, how they're exploiting it on revenue. And it's a really interesting shift, how quickly that's happening. I mean, saw an announcement for a movie being bought out of Toronto where it was one of these VOD companies, and they made a point in their announcement about how robust the theatrical release for the film was going to be. And to me, that's a major shift in what their overall strategy is.
And honestly, that's a big part of what we're doing is I've always been, I don't want to say a believer in theatrical for every film, but I'm a believer in theatrical, and I do believe VOD is going to run into the same problem that DVD had, because Netflix is essentially, it's viewed by most consumers as, well, this is a free movie. You're paying $9.99 a month or whatever you're paying for it. But you can watch it. They have this thing, I forget what it's called, it's the habit where you watch the first 5 minutes of one movie, then the first 5 minutes of the next, and the first 5 minutes of another, and then say, fuck it, I'm watching, 5 episodes of The Cosby Show or whatever. And that's as a filmmaker, that should scare you, and as a distributor, that would scare me, except for the fact that if my film is on Netflix, Netflix gave me a 6-figure check for the privilege, hopefully 6 figures, knock on wood. So what I take very seriously is the fact that this whole flooding of the VOD market, which I think we talked about last year, it hasn't changed. You turn on your cable channel, you click in theaters now, and you see a folder of some good movies, or you'll recognize Snowpiercer. If we do our job right, you'll recognize The Zero Theorem. And you'll see a ton of just crap. And it's maybe not crap, but it's a romantic comedy with a 1990s sitcom star.
It's crap.
It is crap. So are you going to pay $10 for that shit just because it's in a theater next to Snowpiercer? Of course not. That business model was never designed to succeed, and the companies that built their business model on that business model now no longer have a business model. It's a bummer for them. But I think it actually winds up being good news for the consumer, because that film goes eventually where it does belong, which is the 99-cent bin on, whether it's on VOD, whether it's on YouTube for free. That may be where that film belongs, because every film has some audience. It just, might not be worth $10. There is a valuation coming that I think is going to hurt people's feelings, but I think it's actually probably a good correction for the industry.
Well, just to be clear, though, you can still make money with crap movies.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's still happening. I mean, hopefully you can make money with really good movies, but, the keys to how movies make money, what the inherent demand is, are really wrapped up into things like, genre and star power and packaging. Those are the key drivers to how to monetize films, or what differentiates the high-performing titles from other performing titles. So you still are making money on VOD. You're starting to see a situation where you can't count on it the same way you were, literally 6 months ago.
Even 2 years ago, you could count on putting a comedy on VOD, and if it was in the theaters now, you'd get 100 or 200 grand out of it. I'm seeing a lot of those films now, making 15, 16 grand for the life of their VOD thing.
I want to hear from Straith, because I think what guys are bringing up is a really important point, which I know when I look in VOD, I see just a lot of shit. And I was thinking about it and talking with my husband when we were looking for something to watch, that the kind of things I want to watch, they're few and far between. Like, it's a lot of genre or a lot of just kind of low quality stuff. And where are the things I want to watch? Independent films by interesting filmmakers, or documentaries, or good television. I end up watching a lot of television series because I can't find the things I want. And I think it comes back to curation. People are going to more and more want to go to a curated space. But I want to hear from you about BitTorrent, and from your perspective, how have things changed, or what's changing at BitTorrent in the current climate?
Sure. I think there's a couple things. I think your point about long-form content resonates with me, as does yours about packaging. I think if you can kind of take an example outside of the film world and think about the rise of vinyl, for example, 30% for maybe the 10th year in a row. And if you think about what a record is, it's this beautiful artifact. So it's the actual music, it's the art, it's everything from the artist around it. And it kind of tells you how to hear the music and how to interpret it, and it becomes yours that way. And that's why, you can still sell vinyl for the, immense amount of money. I think if we can think about digital objects in the same way, if we can kind of craft these stories around them, they become more valuable to us. They're not disposable. They're not something that's lost in the stream. They're actually complete and whole experiences. And I know you guys at VHX actually did a great study maybe a couple months ago talking about where revenue from VOD comes from. A lot of it comes from people who are buying the package that has the film, but also all of the extras. So I think really at the core, we need to think about what is the next media format beyond streaming and beyond VOD, but what is the format that drives value?
Right. I think that's actually a perfect segue to talk about the act of killing, because several of the people on the panel here work together on the act of killing. So why don't can we show the trailer, and then we'll get into how the genesis of how that partnership started. Yeah, is that possible? Okay.
Itu definisi kejahatan perang. Itu buatan orang yang menang. Saya pemenang. Tolong, Bapak. Yang saya harapkan tadi tidak sampai begitu baik. Nggak bisa diulangi. Banyak ya, manusia yang keras ada di negeri. Apa dosa, Mas Ren?
Great.
Yeah.
Very good.
like how a subscribe button
Yeah.
popped up right there. Like we can
What player was
subscribe.
that? YouTube.
I think it was YouTube, yeah. So, James, do you want to start and talk about the relationship between BitTorrent, VHX, and on the project? And how it worked?
Sure. So Act of Killing is a movie we put out last summer theatrically. It was a film we picked up in 2012 at the Toronto Film Festival. And we're lucky enough to get nominated for an Oscar last year for, which
Wow.
we did not win.
It's rigged.
We were robbed. With all of our films, we're trying to get it out to the widest audience possible. And this was a really challenging film because it requires the audience in a really confrontational way to spend 2 hours with people that killed hundreds of people with their own hands. And do it in a way that by the end of the film, you come to sort of realize that they're really no different than the people who live next door to you. That there are no evil people, that they're just evil acts. And there required some background to understanding, the political context of the film, that this genocide happened in Indonesia in 1965, that a lot of people, that we released the film to weren't aware of. So there were a couple pieces that we needed to do as a distribution company to get some information out there and build the awareness for the film. Because documentaries are hard to distribute. Foreign language documentaries are very hard to distribute. Documentary foreign language films about death killers are extremely hard to distribute. So we did a couple things. We partnered with both VHX and BitTorrent to help get the film out there. VHX built a dedicated website for the film that we could start driving people to find out more information about, the genocide. And eventually we partnered with them on getting the movie to anybody in Indonesia who wanted to download the film. The film is, well, just to put a little bit of really quick background, what's going on in Indonesia is, the best analogy is, imagine Nazi Germany today if the Nazis were still in power. The people that perpetrated this genocide and killed somewhere between 1 million and 2 million people are still in power in that country, even if it's a democracy. The people that killed people with their own bare hands are leaders, and very wealthy, people in that country. And they boast openly about what they've done. So to get dialogue started in that country, the filmmaker Josh Oppenheimer, he made this movie, and he's just starting a release on his companion piece, The Look of Silence. They did a bunch of underground screenings of Act of Killing in Indonesia because they couldn't do it publicly, because people would be feared, their lives would be in danger. In fact, the filmmaker now can no longer go back into Indonesia. He can get in the country, he just can never leave the country if he goes back in. So VHX provided a download for anybody in Indonesia that could download it and be able to watch it. And we had a really successful release strategy that way. We didn't have Indonesian rights, but we went to the sales agent, and they, with the filmmaker, wanted to do that. The other piece we did with BitTorrent was they came to us and suggested this idea of doing promotional bundles with the film and putting that on their servers and having that, basically live in their ecosystem. So the first one that we did was for Act of Killing. So we took a bunch of promotional material, in the trailer for the film, and, with working with them, we created this bundle that got out in their ecosystem to the tune of something like 3.5 million people worldwide.
It was 3.5 million people, and I think critically for this film, because it's not a purely historical documentary, what we were able to put together is all of the coverage of the genocide, all of the information that informed the topic to begin with, which we in the West are largely unaware of. It was basically a perfect time capsule that could not be preserved, and it could be sent to 3.5 million people around the world.
So my question about that then is, okay, so you created this really interesting partnership where you guys, I guess, were behind the Oscar campaign. You worked with a platform like VHX. You had this promotional bundle. how did it drive revenue, or was revenue even the goal, given the political nature of the film? And how could you track the data of those kind of results?
Well, there was no revenue being generated with VHX, and I mean that's a conversation. I'm sorry, with BitTorrent. And that's a conversation we can come back to later because they've built something that is going to start being revenue generating. We're going to start working with them on that. VHX, we didn't get any revenue for the Indonesian downloads, but they have been our partner on every film that we've released, including Active Killing, and you can purchase Active Killing or on their platform right now. So in terms of what we did with them, how that generated revenue, it built awareness. I mean, that was we wanted to get the story of the genocide out there. That was our, the first reason we were doing this. And the second, we do need to make up the money that we spend. We do want to, grow as a company, so we were trying to monetize it. And just the sheer awareness of it helped. And the fact that both the Indonesian download and the BitTorrent 3.5 million people downloading that became a PR piece for us as well for the film, that we were able to have press releases that touted how successful those were, and that added into the entire release. And we timed these things in a way that we released the movie in July, so we got the big push theatrically, and then when the theatrical push started to die down, we wanted to position it for the Oscars, and so that's when we started working with these companies, and that helped position the movie in a way that it really did help the Oscar campaign. And it was, to be honest, a cheaper way of doing an Oscar campaign to work with companies like this. We're not Harvey Weinstein. We can't have these big dinners and have talent there and yay, 20 feet from stardom. We can do it this way, and we can get the awareness out there. And the fact that the movie got nominated for an Oscar, that's what really drove a lot of revenue to that title.
Mm-hmm. I think the other piece too, and you mentioned it initially, is just the value of an email, the value of a subscriber base. So this promotion alone, I think, got over 52,000 emails. And those are people that are not only committed to the film, but committed to the next film that Drafthouse produces.
Can you just explain that to the audience? So how do you get the emails in? Because some people don't know that if they work with you, you can get access to that email database of people who are downloading the bundle or your film.
Sure. So
I think that has huge value, so it's personally fascinating to learn that.
yeah, so there's basically 3 ways that you can distribute content on BitTorrent. You could release something for free in the same way that you put up a trailer on YouTube. You can ask people to submit an email address in exchange for content. Or just starting last week on Friday, you can ask people to pay for content. So we launched the Paygate feature with an artist called Tom York. BitTorrent is now officially a paid marketplace, which is amazing. And since Friday, we've seen close to 900,000 downloads, again, of the paid and free product. So it's pretty remarkable. I think at the core of the platform and kind of at the core of our ideas about content is artist flexibility. You guys know way better than we do what business model is right for you. So again, if emails are meaningful for you as you promote your film, release it that way. If it's more important for you to have a Paygate or a pay what you want pricing system, release it that way. And that's your call.
And that contributes to this narrative around a digital object, which until you mentioned it earlier, like it seems so challenging to create like a digital object that is as special as or feels as personal as a physical object could ever. Yeah. But with that VOD study that you mentioned, that was about a documentary called Stripped, and there are a lot of other cases on VHX and BitTorrent will have the same amazing benefit of being able to combine all these different kinds of files and content together into this like care package straight from the creator. And so on VHX, one thing that publishers have been doing is monetizing their bonus content, whether they're even selling the feature with this bonus content or not. There are some packages that exist exclusively of like the director's cut, deleted scenes. When Dave Grohl and Sound City sold via VHX, they put the film on pre-order for 3 months leading up to the release, and pre-orders got a special download of deleted scenes from the film. And then they released everywhere. They were ubiquitous. They went to all outlets, and VHX was just one puzzle piece, just like Active Killing was a puzzle piece in Drafthouse's very broad distribution strategy that didn't bring in a lot of revenue. But in the case of Sound City, for example, you know, they were top 5 in iTunes documentaries of all time, I think, and 50% of the revenue in the first month came from direct sales from the site. And I think a lot of that has to do with incentivizing people with this like personal thing that he was able to add with the bonus content during pre-orders, and just that feeling of a personal connection because it's all in your voice, and you know, you're able to communicate in your own messaging.
So it
Well,
seems
can I
to me
just-
like now.
I want to show something really quickly. So VHX, we're building a community around Active Killing as well, and this is just in the last 3 days. Like the email addresses that I've gotten off VHX. I'm just going to scroll through my phone. Like that's like 40 people in 3 days.
That's really cool.
So
I'm
what
gonna keep scrolling.
what I'm getting out of this though is that the marketing materials that you make as a filmmaker to go along with your film are more important than ever. Because formerly we would just deliver it to a distributor or a broadcaster and they would use it to promote the film. But now it's actually going to consumers. Like I looked at your bundle and there were photos, behind the scenes, even like the press kit is part of that bundle. And that's going to consumers. And that was always previously packaged in a different way via television or whatever to be directed to consumers. So I think it's a good note for all of us to really think even more about those marketing materials because they seem more important as assets when you're done than ever.
I can't stress enough, we were talking about this earlier, like as a distributor, one of my biggest frustrations is bad marketing materials that filmmakers have created. And I don't say this to be, you know, mean. Like, I will always cut a better trailer for your film than you will. Always. Now, you may not be working with a distributor, so there's that.
Cut our trailer.
But there are people out there
I
who
should.
can cut your trailer for you even if you don't have a distributor. Like, I'm not sitting at my desk cutting trailers. Like, I'm gonna give 5 pages of notes on a trailer, and that's, you know, partly what I get paid for. But you can do that too. It's good to have fresh eyes on it. Once you put something out on the internet, it will never go away. And I know at the last panel they were discussing the importance of your crowdfunding materials being of professional quality and matching it. I send a PDF out with most of my releases to theaters that says, this is what our poster looks like. These 5 other things you can find on the internet from festivals, pre-production, crowdfunding. These are not our posters. Please don't market this film with that. You can hurt your film very badly with bad marketing materials, more than you can help it sometimes. So I want to take a minute and say, please don't cut a shitty trailer.
I'm gonna make
think
like
some
a
of it,
trailer
though.
challenge and get you to cut trailers for all my films and see what's better.
I charge so much money for that, but I will totally do it for you for free.
Going back to the emails, so what I'm curious about is, so you're getting all these emails from VHX. What are you going to do with those emails, or how do you manage that?
Well, in the case of Active Killing, we've got the director's next movie, Look of Silence. So, you know, thankfully we've built an audience around Active Killing, and we can feel really confident that Look of Silence is going to reach even a wider audience because it's not a sequel. We're calling it a companion film. We've already got a built-in audience for that film, you know, and it's our privilege to be able to continue to work with, you know, a filmmaker as great as Josh is. So that's really the first step. Now, Josh also has like 24 hours of additional footage for Active Killing. So we can keep the, you know, we've got some ideas about keeping that, you know, audience engaged with Active Killing by going back and, you know, sort of releasing, you know, some additional footage, you know, from Active Killing, especially when we start ramping up the campaign for Look of Silence.
Mm-hmm. So you're going to use it as a springboard for the next film. How do you find that filmmakers or content creators that get that email list from you, how have you seen it best used?
Yeah, I'm thinking almost exactly the same way. Many times, unfortunately, it looks like people are starting from scratch every time they start a film. So starting with a brand new audience, basically over again, that's a remarkable inefficiency. And I think email, in some cases, having a direct line into your audience before the film starts, before you even start work on it, can be incredibly valuable. Just using that as a group to reach out to over and over again, picking them up, carrying them with you from one project to the next, and even through it. while you're in production, while you're shooting, can be incredibly valuable.
And I'm going to toot your horn because I don't think you're going to do it for yourself.
I was about to.
Oh, okay. There's no distribution company out that's better at branding than Drafthouse, because I don't think there's another company, and I'm including mine, where people see the logo for the company and say, oh shit, it's an X film, like this is going to be good. Like Drafthouse has done such a good job of curating, but also of branding and also of continuing the marketing, that it's useful for you to get an email address for the act of killing, not only for the look of silence, but because you curate so well, your next films are probably going to apply. I can't do that a lot of the time because we're a little bit all over the map, and it's partially by design and partially out of necessity. So when we get an email address, and that's one of the things we love the most about VHX, when you buy my film on iTunes, I don't get your email. When you buy my film on VHX, I get your email. I'm not going to spam you with stuff I know you're not going to like because you're going to unsubscribe, but we put email addresses in buckets. Like, okay, this film is an X bucket, and we know that our next film, the people like this film and that film will probably like this, but they won't like it if they like this film and that film, so we're only going to market to the right people. Let's
So
just be
over
smart.
time, it'll actually be more valuable than
Absolutely.
for each instance. Yeah.
It helps you get smarter.
And on an individual scale for a filmmaker, you're having that information. If it's your first film, you can look at the city and say, oh, I have so many people that just bought this and they're all in Pasadena. Maybe I should call Tug or Gather and get a screening and organize that there. There are ways that you can target on an individual scale too, whether you're thinking about your next project or not. There are also ways that you can maybe look at your crowdfunding supporters and then look at the people who are buying your film and see if they're the same people. And realize maybe you should be putting out more bonus content because the people who are buying from you already own the film and they just want more stuff. And one of the biggest things that we've seen with VHX is that your fans will buy more if you give them more to buy.
I actually forgot to finish my point, but you sort of hit on it.
Oh.
What I want you guys to
Good
do
teamwork. Yeah.
is be mini Drafthouses, because your next film is probably going to appeal to the fans of the film you made before. That's something you can carry, and it is so inefficient to start from scratch every time.
We don't have to anymore, but we used to have to. And
That
now-
brings
yeah.
me to my next question. So say I'm a filmmaker here at VIF. I have a film. Maybe I, don't have Canadian rights available because that's how I raised the money to pay for the film. How would I decide amongst all of you which platform, who to go to, how to approach you to get my film out there? Say if, the US rights or a lot of rights are still available.
The way we buy films is terribly inefficient, and I find it to be quite maddening. The model of James and I are going to go to Toronto, and then we're going to watch a bunch of films, and then everyone else is going to watch the same films at the same time, and then we're going to buy it, and 6 months later we're going to put it out. I've been able to do the model I want to do once on Sound City because Dave Grohl, and admittedly, Dave Grohl is also a huge rock star, and he also has $250 million in the bank. That helps.
And a lot of fans.
But Dave Grohl can make a film and say, look, this film's going to be done in November. I've submitted it to Sundance. I'm pretty sure it's going to get in. I want to do a bunch of promo, take the film to Sundance, throw a concert. Next week, I want it in 50 theaters. I want it in every platform. I want it worldwide on VHX. I want it on iTunes in 33 countries. I want to do that, and he can do that. And that's a goddamn genius way to put a movie out. There's no artificial campaign, peak and valley. Doesn't get a lot of buzz at a festival and go quiet for 6 months. That's the dream. The problem is, as a filmmaker, you can't just say, okay, well, I want to sell my film 6 months before the festival, because you might be missing out on that 1 or 2 distribution deals at Sundance or TIFF that are worth 7 figures. I kind of wish more of them would come to us and let us, we like to pre-buy. It's what we call it when we get a film before it goes to the festival. That's a great way to do that. It's really tricky because the value is perceived to be less that way, but it really is a smarter way of going about it. That's my dream.
Yeah, we only have 10 minutes left, right? So I want to open it up for questions, but did anyone want to add anything quickly to that if you're a filmmaker? And that might be one of the questions.
I'll add something really quick. I think what we found working with broadcasters and film distributors over the last 3 years is there's really no magic bullet on a model on how to really monetize your video content. I think it's something that, we say all the time, content is king, but at this point in time, data is queen. And you need the data to kind of figure it out, but I think it requires a specific kind of filmmaker to go the long haul with that. I mean, even in your instance where emails don't necessarily apply to single films, but over time, with your brand, you can start massaging that data and figuring out how to best suit it for your needs. It requires a specific filmmaker who's more entrepreneurial, who's really in it to build a business over the long haul, which is, it's kind of ironic that the film industry is the only industry that doesn't understand repeat business, But we're learning that now, but we need the data to do that.
Yeah, it's taken a long time. I mean, I think that's why people are seeing this as the success of TV, because people can just come back. It's a brand, which obviously big studio movies are too. So I'm going to open it up for questions from the audience, because we have, I think, about eight minutes left. Does anyone want to ask any questions, or I'll just keep going?
There's one in the middle here.
So yeah, if you could use the mic, because they're recording it, be great.
There you go.
Yeah, can we make sure we hand the mic to people on? Thanks. Be great. Thank you.
Hello. Hey. So BitTorrent, very interesting what's happening there with the bundling options. Are you also providing analytics on that in addition to the emails that are being? Yeah.
100%. So that's probably the issue, one of the issues that we're most passionate about. Your data 100% belongs to you. So any publisher has access to their own stats portal. You know who's gone to your page, you know who's downloaded it, you know who's streamed it. You have all of their email addresses, and that won't change with pay gates being rolled out to all publishers. That's completely sacred. That belongs to you guys.
How's that?
Anyone else have a question? In the back?
Hi. I have a quick question about film distribution rights. You guys were mentioning that sometimes that Canadian rights aren't available and you can sell international rights. I was hoping you could explain how the rights process works and why it wouldn't be available in a certain country.
Well, if you've sold it in that country, then the rights are no longer available. So,
No, go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, you go ahead.
I'm not putting films out in Liechtenstein. So someone in Liechtenstein is going to buy your film and put it out in Liechtenstein. The problem is that person might want to release your film 2 years after I do, or they might want to cut a trailer that makes it look like a porno. And I can't do anything about that because I don't have Liechtenstein rights.
Yeah, so Dylan in particular is specifically
Not in
doing
Liechtenstein.
the U.S.
So you can use the bad trailer in Liechtenstein.
Yeah.
You could use a direct platform like VHX and then work with one of these guys for your, North American rights. Know in advance that you want to use VHX and say, like, let's work together on this, and you get your percentage. And then all the countries that don't concern that distribution deal, you can sell them directly. That's an option. Though there are some distribution deals that would prevent you from selling in other countries. You have to kind of know in advance if you're planning on selling it yourself.
It comes down to what you said, that we're still in this weird transitional time between the traditional model where everything was broken up, my mic is fading, territory by territory, country by country, to web-based platforms which are global. And we're still in this weird interim period where distributors and sales agents can go sell around the world, territory by territory. But if VHS takes it and puts it out over the world, it scares that old model, right?
But you can set country by country. Like yes, it would scare them, but you should know in advance if you're planning on trying to find distribution deals in certain places, and then you can plan around that. But otherwise, you can set it to be available in certain countries or not. Black and Sexy, the YouTube channel I was talking about earlier, it's our bestseller this week, and they have people buying their film literally from Bahrain to Bermuda to Denmark. I just looked at the countries today. They're just a YouTube channel, like a group of people that are making this content from their home, and they are selling it on VHX to have some funding, but most of it is being given away for free. So they wouldn't have gone to the lengths, I don't think, to work out all those distribution deals in all those countries, but they can put it up and just throw the gates open, which is really nice for that use case, and it might be appropriate for you, or you might want to kind of block things out in a more traditional way.
So just to clarify, if I were at a film festival, I wouldn't be selling the rights until after I've shown that at the film festival, correct?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily?
We've heard of people actually creating windows during a film festival.
Okay.
Using the film festival as a marketing buzz to actually drive people to your own IP where you have your own movie on a VOD, and actually geo-blocking it. Like with our platform in Dotstudio Pro, you have a map where you can literally just pick and choose, which regions and which countries you want to be blocked, right? Or have available, or vice versa. So you could, and we've heard great success stories of people doing it during film festivals where they actually capitalize on that market.
Thank you.
Hi. Quick question. What if you've already sold your film to a distributor and you're not really, not to say they're happy, maybe that you're not getting the results you expected, or how can you become more proactive? What options do you have to keep in check, perhaps, I don't know if that's a good word, you're a distributor?
I'm torn on this one.
Well, it
It's a
depends
very
on
loaded
the,
question.
yeah,
Loaded question.
depends on the contract you've signed, and if you've given them all rights
It's
or
called
not.
a lawyer, right?
Because that is a problem that, distributors can have rights and they don't exploit them, and especially in innovative ways that these guys do. I mean, I don't know, I've been in business for 17 years, and I'm now in the process of going back through my catalog where the rights have come back to us and re-releasing and looking at all these different platforms that now I can reach a global audience for, and that people still want to see the films. So, but it really depends on the contracts. Most of them are all rights. I mean, so you have to negotiate in advance to keep certain rights away. And in this country, especially television broadcasters want to take all the rights now. So it's very hard to keep VOD or different rights.
Yeah, but I guess if you have a good relationship with your distributor, say you do, is there some approach to say, look, if they're willing to let go of some rights, like maybe perhaps your international rights to some degree, maybe it's not doing as well. If there was a scenario where there's kind of last minute, we want your international rights as well, maybe you were working on a deal prior to that. But if you have an open dialogue with a distributor, could I, or you, have that discussion, like, look.
I mean,
Well, you should be having these conversations on the front end, when you're selling the movie, with the distributor. I mean, look, as a distributor, I can't guarantee gross receipts on every revenue stream, and I mean, I believe in collaboration and I believe in transparency. Doesn't mean that every film that I've released, has worked at the level that we wanted it to when we purchased the film. It's really important that you are working with a distributor who's passionate and is going to be forthcoming with you. If you, do research on the distributor, and you've got a sales agent that you're working with that you trust, then you can feel pretty confident. And that if you're 4 years down the line and that you don't feel like they've properly exploited the film or haven't exploited every revenue stream possible, I hope that you have a relationship with the distributor. I mean, I hope I have that relationship with the people that I'm working with, where they can come to me and they can go, let's fix this, and have a dialogue on how to do it. And me personally, I'd be open to the idea if they said, you know what, broadcast, you haven't been a broadcast sale yet. Can I get broadcast rights back? You can probably figure out an arrangement. If I don't feel like I can exploit broadcast on that title, then I'd be willing to consider, an arrangement where you can get broadcast back. But I'm just one distributor, and Dylan's nodding his head, so I'm assuming you have the same.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, truth be told, just having worked with a bunch of other distributors when I was only doing theatrical, what you're basically going to have to do is, first of all, come to terms with the fact that films don't stack up. Like, I've worked on 75 films over my career. I guarantee if you look through my email, I would say probably 55 of them, I haven't sent an email related to that film in a year, if not longer. So there's a lack of interest after a time period. There always is. Now, if you have an idea and you have a plan, the best thing you can do is, and this is again dependent on the relationship, go to your distributor and say, look, you haven't monetized this. I have this idea. The two most important things they're going to want to hear is, this isn't going to take any of your time, and we will give you the revenue share you're entitled to from the money that we make from this. Because they're not going to, if you come and say, I found a way to make a $100,000 television sale, they're going to be like, great, send me the email and then I'll take my whatever percent. It's tough to just get them to give it to you for free. I would do that if I couldn't figure out something to do and you did, but I'm not every distributor, obviously.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
they also may not have heard of some of these platforms, because depending on the distributor, they're working in a very old model. So you could go to them and say, look, I'd like to put the film on VHX in the territories where you haven't sold it? Or can we get it on iTunes? Like sometimes you have to remind them. You know, I've gone back to distributors that I've worked with and said, hey, have you thought about re-releasing this title? And they're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, let's do it. And they've resold it to pay television, and it's like it wasn't on iTunes because it was a little bit older. And so they've re-released it. Sometimes you could, I've done broadcast sales myself and said, look, this, you know, the Sundance Channel wants to buy this title. Oh, okay, you know, we'll forego our commission if that can go back. The rest can, you know, pay us back. So I do think it really helps to be proactive and create a dialogue. Not like you suck and haven't sold my film.
But
Yeah,
that
starting
I can help you
It's
more.
only going to benefit both of you,
Yeah.
right? It's only going to, because we've invested money in it, you know. I mean, we're doing it because A, we love the movie, and B, we're trying to make money off of it. So if you've got an idea, then it only makes sense to be clear about it. I would be remiss without pointing out that self-distribution is becoming a pretty interesting model out there. So, you know, all that advice that I just said about, you know, research and, you know, trust and good sales agent, like if you don't have those things, you know, it is possible to release movies now completely on your own, you know, and that way you're responsible for all these revenue streams. I mean, I think most self-distribution models are going to fail, but I've seen some really interesting success stories, you know, when filmmakers who've turned down distribution deals and have gone out and made money and gotten an audience for their films because, you know, it's their film. Nobody knows it better than they do.
Right, and that depends on the content, the quality of the content, and on whether you are able to build an audience, whether you already have one, and whether you make smart decisions at the outset. Like if you sell your exclusive rights to one outlet for the first 3 months, you're not going to make money after that nearly as easily as you would have if you didn't give away, you know, the keys. And you know, your film is your baby, so you shouldn't just abandon it into the hands of strangers completely. I mean, granted, this hypothetical question sounds like it's in hindsight a little, so I'm not scolding you, but it's a very complicated landscape, and you could use something like VHX to partner with them. Like we have affiliates, we can send an invoice, like send money to whoever you specify, your distributor, anyone else, but you are harvesting that data constantly. And like we also have, like BitTorrent does, a robust stats dashboard that's updated daily. You get all the information. You can send screeners to see who's watched them. You can, you know, you don't have to, it's a revenue share I didn't mention earlier. So like we don't make any money until you do, and you can use all the free features forever. And so if you use something like that, whether it's that or BitTorrent or anything that you're like kind of retaining some ownership of what you worked so hard on, you know, a lot of really good distributors, like these guys, understand your relationship to your work and are trying to protect it. But some people might want to write you a check and then just see if they can monetize it right away, and then not really think about you much more after that. So, you know, it take that ownership and hang on to it, even though it's a lot of work to think about the long tail. 'Cause there's a lot that you can do later, and it doesn't need to be about exclusive channels. Like you can kind of combine forces from all these different tools when the film's coming out or down the road, depending on how creative you are.
Okay, we're over time, so it's totally up to you if I can keep taking questions, yeah? Can we?
Or it'd be great to just have questions over beer and appetizers. And
That's
stuff.
right.
Okay, one more question, and then questions
ready
over
for
beer
beer.
and appetizers.
We did not mic you up for that.
Because I think that's a great way to end it.
My question is directed, I guess, mostly for Dylan and James. I'm wondering, from the point of view of a distributor, how is your preference in terms of drawbacks and benefits of working directly with the filmmakers or working through a sales agency?
If I buy a film from a sales agent, the first thing I do is have a meeting with the filmmaker. Like, I mean, the sales agent sells the film, and then the sales agent's job is, at least as far as I'm concerned, complete for me. Like, you know, I'm not going to, if possible, work on a film where I'm not in contact with the filmmaker. No one's going to know the film better than you. If we don't get that information, what do we have? That's it. The first thing I ask when I sit down with the filmmaker at the end of the meeting is I give him a homework assignment, which is like, I want to know everything you do, all the data you've collected in production, which is where stuff like VHX, BitTorrent, Kickstarter, list of your backers, where they're from, where the hotspots are, where you're getting emails from, your social media login so I can see where your fans are. Like, all that information informs how we release a film. Your sales agent doesn't know that, but I need to. So, you know, not only do I want to work with the filmmaker, I want to get as much out of them. I do want to stress that there's always a little bit of a fight in it, because there are going to be certain things that I know how to do that you don't, or that maybe you do, but you know, we disagree on. Let us do our thing to a degree, but don't just abandon it and say whatever you do is fine. Like, I want to hear you fight back if you hate the trailer. Tell me why, and you know, we'll have a debate.
I mean, keep in mind the sales agent's working for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I do care a little bit whether I'm dealing with the filmmaker or if I'm dealing with the sales agent, but they're there to protect you, to make sure that you're going to be covered and that I'm not going to take advantage of you. Like, I need to make sure that there's certain legal, you know, things happening, you know, that you have chain of title, right? That you have all your clearances, you know, stuff like that. It's a lot easier for me to do that through a sales agent than to deal, especially with first-time filmmakers. But I honestly, doesn't matter to me if I get all your rights. Doesn't matter if I get it from you or if I get it from the sales agent. But it benefits you to really have a good sales agent.
No doubt.
So I just want to wrap this up. I want to thank all the panelists. I mean, the big takeaways for me listening to these guys talk are peer-to-peer is more important than ever. That's really the future, and direct contact with your audience and people who want to see your films is the most important. And a lot of these platforms and ways these guys are attacking distribution is the way to do that. So that to me is really interesting. And then I also think it's pretty cool that James's company has like special events to watch movies. Like, you take a train and then get to see a film projected on Devil's Tower, you know, and then there's a party.
We didn't even get to talk about that.
We didn't even get to talk about that, which I thought was really, really cool. But I think it's about creating unique experience now. Well, how do you provide a unique experience so they don't watch the first 5 minutes of your film, but they watch the whole thing? And that's something more and more to think about. That, to me, is what the bundling is. It's creating a unique experience. It's involving your audience in the experience of making it. It's taking them behind the scenes. It's letting them. So more and more and more in this very cluttered world, people want unique experience. And that's up to us to create that as content creators. That's what I get from it all. So thank you.
Thanks for having us.